Today we are going to go through all the books that I read in 2023. I'm gonna start with the first book that I read. I think my baby's crying. Maybe not, maybe I'm just hearing things. So I'm gonna start with the first book that I read last year and go in the order that I read them. I have a notebook with notes on the books because how am I gonna remember the books that I read like 12 months ago? Oh my god, she's up. Or is that my cat? I don't know. Oh, there she is. One minute. Where is she? Okay, I think she's, oh, I see her. She's by the door. Okay, I might have to go up and get her if she keeps crying. Put her back to bed anyway. Okay, I have a notebook with notes because it's gonna be hard for me to remember all the books that I read this year, especially the ones that I didn't like, yada yada. Anyway, wait, what? I put the books in the wrong order. One second. Okay, they were half. One pile was in the right order, one pile wasn't, but I do also need my Kindle, so I'm going to do that. So, the first book that I read last year was Confess by Colleen Hoover. This is a romance book, and I gave it like 3.5 stars because I did enjoy it while I read it, but it wasn't as good as the other books of hers that I've read. So in the beginning of this, we are following Auburn, who's a teenager, and her boyfriend is dying of cancer, and they're in the hospital, and it's like her last goodbye, and his mom and brother are also there, and the mom and brother are like trying to scoot her out and like, you gotta go. Like, it seems like they don't really have a good relationship. And then we fast forward, she's like in her 20s at that point, or no, I think she's 20 because she's actually, there's like a point where they talk about how she's underage, whatever. And her life is like a little bit rocky-ish. She needs another job to make more money, and she sees a hiring sign in a art gallery, and that's when she meets the male main character, Owen, who is an artist and owns the gallery and hires her. So this is where the romance starts. So he's an artist, and he does something interesting with confessions that help him with his art. He also has a secret that he kind of keeps from Auburn. So that kind of could possibly potentially like ruin something for her in her life. She is still connected to her old boyfriend's mom and brother, so they're in the mix of the story as well. And they're not the best relationships, so there's definitely some drama in this one. And I like the ending. There were some like fun connections made, some sweet moments, some like heartwarming moments. And yeah, I didn't really care either way. It was fine, but not one of the best books that I read. Okay, the second book that I read last year was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is, sorry, I'm like flipping through my note pages because it's like, the book is like doing this and it's annoying. We'll set it like this, maybe I won't do that. So this is a fantasy romance. It's a bit of a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's the first fantasy romance book that I've read, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. Oh my god, she's knocking on her door. She wants to go to bed, but then she doesn't go to bed. Okay, so in this book, there are humans and there are fairies or fae, and there's a wall between the two sides. Everyone from either side hears different stories about each other, and you know, they both don't like each other for that reason. Like, the humans fear the fairies, and the fairies think that humans are just like trash, basically. We start off the book following Feyre. The book's from her point of view. She is a human, and she was once, her family was wealthy at one point, but when we start the book, they are poor because they have lost all their money. So Feyre, for some reason, becomes the provider for the family, and so she learns how to hunt and feed her family, which is like just ridiculous, but because everyone else just like sits around, I guess. But one day when she's out hunting, she kills a wolf. Shortly after, a beast, Beauty and the Beast, a beast shows up at her family's house. And because of the treaty that the humans and fairies have together, wait, I need to backtrack. I missed something. The wolf is a fairy, okay? So the beast comes to take Feyre because the treaty says either he can take her back to the fairylands to live with him, or he's got to kill her, obviously. So Feyre decides to go with him, and he takes her back to the fairy world that he lives in. So the story kind of goes from there. I'm definitely not going to say much more than that, just because I honestly, I think with pretty much every single book I've read, I really didn't read like the back of books. I just like heard like a sentence or two from someone, and then oh, she's crying again. And then I just started reading it. So I don't want to share too much about each book. The story goes from there. It's so much fun to learn about the world. There's a lot of action, a lot of romance, and there's also a bit of like a trial situation that ends up happening too. Yeah, this book was really good, and I was super excited to continue and read the rest of the series after reading this book. The next book I read is called Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I don't have this book because I got rid of it because I didn't really like it that much. It's a romantic comedy, and I gave it 2 stars. I feel like this book just wasn't for me, I guess. But anyway, it's about Chani and Gabe, and Chani is a journalist, and Gabe is a big Hollywood actor, and he's actually her celebrity crush. And at some point in her career, she gets the chance to interview him and do an article on him. While she does that, a lot of stuff happens between them, and then we jump to the future, and she is getting the chance to interview him again. And so she's kind of deciding between if she should do that or not because of what had happened, but also that article kind of made her career, and that's what she's known for, and it could be really good for her to do it again. But the book goes back and forth between the past and the present, and so you're learning about each time she interviews him. Between that, there are articles like from gossip magazines and stuff like that that are supposed to like just give you more knowledge about the story, I guess, or them as people, but like, or him, I mean, because he's the actor. But like when I was reading it, I didn't really think that those tied to whatever I was reading before and after the article, or like that I really needed it for the story. I just didn't really like those. I guess I could have skipped them, but I just didn't like that. And then other than the articles, her interviewing him, there's like really not a lot else that happens. Like if I'm like visualizing the movie out in like scenes, I feel like there's not that many scenes or backdrops, and I don't like that. It just makes the book feel like small to me. But other than that, it's just the articles, so there really wasn't much to it to me, so I didn't really get that like involved in the story or too attached to the characters. Like I kind of can't even tell you at this point what their personalities were like. Like, was he grumpy or was she grumpy, or I don't know. I don't remember. That was that, and I took it to a used bookstore, I think. Then the next book I read was A Court of Mist and Fury, the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses, or ACOTAR series. I did a little flip through and tabbed and highlighted. Oh my gosh, she's still crying. What do I do? So I loved this one. This one was my favorite in the whole entire series because I have read the whole series. Hint, hint. It was just like the perfect balance of romance and fantasy. You learn a ton in this book. It really takes a turn from the last book and like sets the course for the rest of the series. So because it ended on such a cliffhanger, I was inclined to go right to the next book, but I was just like, I don't know what to do. Do I read a romance book next? Do I read the next book in this series? And I tried to read like a page of another book and I was like, nope, can't do it. Cannot do it. I was too into like fantasy in this world to be able to even think about something else. Like that's how good it was. So I went right into the next book, A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is the third book, chunky again. They just get bigger and bigger. That's what they do. Anyway, this book was my second favorite in the series. This one because we already learned, we already got like the backstory in the first book, and then we learn more about the world in the second book. Now we can really get into the action. And we did, and I loved it. It had a tiny bit less romance, so like not as perfect balance as the second book, but still really good. I loved the action. I loved learning more about the other characters in the book, and it really like tied up things really nicely. Like this felt kind of like an end to like a section of the series in a way. Then after that, I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This is a cozy queer fantasy. It follows a character named Linus, and he is like late 30s or early 40s maybe, I think. He's kind of living like this average life, I guess you would say, and he works at a place called the Department in Charge of Magical Youth, and he's a caseworker there. So he goes to orphanages to check up on them and run a report after orphanages that have magical youth. And because he is like meticulous, I guess, or doesn't really ask questions and just sort of follows the rules with all of his reports, he gets chosen to be on like a secret case. And the secret case is an orphanage with a house full of like even more special than just magical youth. He decides to go, and when he's there, we meet a bunch of different fantastical characters. The house is in like a small town on an island far away from the rest of the town. When he gets there, he finds out some things about the kids that is kind of like alarming to him. So along the way, you know, while he's doing his normal reports, he starts to learn things about himself and about life and about all the kids there and the man who runs the orphanage. And it's just like a cozy, sweet, mostly heartwarming book that kind of also ties in like a bit of a lesson to essentially not judge people. It's kind of a nice way to make you think about it, reading like a cozy fantasy. I liked it. I rated it 3 stars. There's a second book that's either out or coming out, and I think I'll read it. It was just a little slower for me because I think that I must just like regular fantasy over cozy fantasy, because what I like about it is like all the action. So this one doesn't have a ton of that, so it's not really like huge page turner, but it is very sweet, and it does like make you think about life. After that, I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, and this is a novella in the ACOTAR series. I think this is the first one that, okay. Do we? No. Okay, I was trying to see if we get other characters' point of views in this one, but I don't think we, oh yes we do. Okay, so this is the first time that we get other characters besides the 2 main characters' point of view in one of these books. So that was kind of fun. It's kind of just a little bit of like a see what they're up to after kind of like some big things that happen in the 3rd book. It's also over the course of their, I think, winter solstice. Yes, which is basically like a winter holiday for them. It's like a good like holiday book to read, I guess, but nowhere near the level at which the other books are. But probably because it's a novella. But I gave it 3 stars. One, I would say I would do reread the Actor series. I'll probably just like skip this one. So after that, I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a small town romance that I rated 4 stars. This book is a part of the Knock 'Em Out series, so there are other books after this one. This is about Knox and Naomi. Naomi is a runaway bride from a big city. I think it's a big city, maybe New York, I'm not 100% sure, but runaway bride to a small town where she meets the male main character, who is kind of like the grumpy guy. Naomi ends up having to take care of her niece, her twin sister's daughter, her niece, because her sister abandoned her. So it's like small town romance, her taking care of the niece and also getting to know the male main character. Throughout the book, there's kind of like a little bit of a mystery, crime vibe happening, which was like just a little bit silly for me. I think that's why maybe I didn't like it. I didn't fully like it to rate it 5 stars and rated it 4 stars instead. The other thing that made me not rate it 5 stars was it was really sticking out to me that they really didn't act their ages. Oh. Like, Knox is supposed to be like 40, I think, and she's like early 30s or mid 30s, something like that. It's like over 30. And they were acting like they were like very young 20s. Like they were so mature, maybe even younger than that. Like just like maybe I'm just really mature, I don't know. But I couldn't, like, it just made me like halt a little bit while I was reading. Like I was just like, they would never do that, or they would never say that, or they would never get mad over that. Like, I know some people do, but like in a book, you know, this isn't real life. Like, I don't know. I guess people are like that, and I guess maybe I just didn't like them as much because of that. But yeah, it was good. It reminded me of one of my favorite TV shows, Heart of Dixie, because there's 2 guys in this and a girl that comes from a big city, and like you can tell they both kind of like her. And then you meet, you know, all the other characters, and you've got the small town little scenes, the little places that they go, and it just reminded me of that show. So I think that's why I liked it, because I was just like, let's see what they're up to. Had the little crime spot in the end, and then got back to the small town vibes after, and yeah, I liked it. I just don't think I'm gonna read any of the other books in the series because I've met the characters in this book, and I'm like, I don't really care. So, and then after that, I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book I got at a used bookstore, and I grabbed it like because of the cover, and then looked it up on Goodreads and saw that it had some pretty good reviews, so I got it. This is a contemporary romance. It was such a good surprise. I wasn't like expecting much because I didn't know much, and I just got it at a used bookstore, but it was so good. I couldn't, like, I'm pretty sure this is the fastest book I've ever read. I was on a family vacation and I could not put it down. It's about a girl who loses her aunt and ends up getting her apartment, which her aunt had told her throughout her life growing up that there was like some magic to the apartment. So when she gets the apartment, she does end up finding out what that magic is, and basically you can time travel in the apartment, but specifically only 7 years. So 7 years in the past or 7 years in the future. While she is time traveling, and you have no control over it, but while she is in the past, she meets the male main character. So she is a book publicist and he's a chef, And I really liked the chef aspect of it. I don't know if it was just this book or if I'll like it in other books, but I really liked it. I loved the like New York setting of it. I don't know, it's hard to say like what specifically about it made it so good, because the other thing is the romance in it isn't as heavy, but like interestingly, like I would swoon over some of the moments. Like he has a nickname for her, and every time it got me, every single time. It's so dang cute. And like, I don't know, there wasn't a ton of romance, there was no spice. But yeah, this was a really pleasant surprise and one of my favorite books. The next book I read is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is a romantic comedy. I gave it 4 stars. This is about Elsie and Jack, and they are rival physicists. She is trying to become a professor, but while she's like a teaching assistant or a teaching, I don't know what it's called, but while she's doing that, she also is a fake dater to make more money on the side. So while she's fake dating, she ends up getting connected to the male main character, Jack, who she already kind of knows of because of the physicist's world. So I liked this one. I liked the setting. I liked like the academia aspect of it, and I did really like the characters. The only thing that I didn't like too much was the spice, because there were just like times where the male main character would say things and I would just be like, I don't know about that. So I don't know, I kind of just like ignored them, pretend like just whatever. But yeah, if it didn't have that, I probably would have gave it 5 stars, because I really did like it. Maybe I'll read it again, honestly, because I feel like I've already forgotten a lot about it. Okay, so next I read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. I got this book from the library, and then I ended up downloading the audiobook from the library because we were going on a trip and I wanted to listen to it in the car. It's a sci-fi novel, and I gave it 3 stars. It's a very popular book, a part of a series, and I don't know, for some reason I just didn't really like it too much. So the main character, his name's Darrow. He is a miner on Mars, or in Mars, because he's underground. Him and the other miners that are there think that they're on Mars to mine elements to one day be able to have people come live on Mars. And that's what he's known his whole life. And he's like, I think he's like a teenager, but he ends up finding out some things about Mars that he did not realize, that they are not the only people on Mars. And so there's a whole class system in this book. He is a red, which is like the lowest, I'm pretty sure it's the very lowest class level. And in the very, like, pretty much the beginning of the book, he becomes a part of like this rebellion that's happening, and he ends up going and imposing as like a higher class person in this academy that typically only accepts high class. And when they're in this academy, they go into basically like a Hunger Games. That's how people describe it. And then it kind of goes from there. So the reason why I didn't really like it is once it got to that part, like the whole beginning was very interesting. I wanted to keep knowing what was going to happen. I wanted to keep finding out about Mars. But then once we got to the Hunger Games area or section of the book, I couldn't keep track of what was happening, to be honest. There wasn't enough like bridges in the writing to connect each thing that was happening. Like I would be reading about something and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're over here and now we're doing this and now we're interacting with these people. It's like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, obviously it's probably just me, but that's why I had kind of a hard time with it, because I ended up looking up a summary to kind of figure out more of the details of what happened in like the second half of the book, because I know I missed stuff, and I did. But honestly, I just think I probably am not like into science fiction books that much. After that, I read Crossed by Emily McIntyre. I'm loaning this book, so I don't have it with me right now, but it's a dark, I would say it's a dark romance, and it is a part of a book series called the Never After series. They're all fairy tale retellings, so this one is a Hunchback of Notre Dame retelling. It's like they're loose retellings, so they're not the exact story, but basically the special part about it is that the main characters, or one of the main characters, is the villain from the fairy tale. So this one is about the priest and Esmeralda. They have like a warning in the beginning of the book that she puts in there that says like, if you need to look up trigger warnings, but if you can, to go in reading blind. So that's what I did. I liked it like that, so I don't want to say too much about the book, but basically it's dark romance. There's some crazy things that happen, and the ending is like, is this good or bad? We don't know, but it's very entertaining, and it is spicy. It's a spicy one, that's for sure. The next book I read is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. So this is the last book that's out right now in the ACOTAR series, and pretty sure it is the biggest one. Let's just take a look. There's so many like pages in the back. 757. Be a biggie. She is, and she was my least favorite besides the novella. So this one is different because we're not following Feyre anymore. We're following one of her sisters, Nesta, and another character in the story, Cassian. This one was good. I mean, obviously the writing was great, but, and like the same vibe as the rest of the books, but it just was, I think it was heavier on the romance and light on the fantasy side. Like there were a few action-packed scenes that I really liked, but they're short, and for this size of a book, it was like you weren't really getting much for a while, and then you got the action. But the romance lovers, you'll love this. But I was just expecting it to be more like the other books where it was more like 50-50. So I think that's where I kind of, maybe I just, because I wasn't expecting it, I was like, I don't know, like nothing's quite happening yet. But this one was good. What did I rate it? I think I might have rated it 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars. After that, I read Flawless by Elsie Silver, and this is a small town romance, and I rated it 5 stars. I love this book. It was so good, and now I'm obsessed with this author, and I have a lot of books to read from her, so I'm very excited about that. This book is about Rhett and Summer. And Brett is a professional bull rider in Canada, and Summer is I think she's a publicist and works on his PR team at the company that her dad owns. Brett's like acting up a little bit, and acting up, it sounds like he's like a child. He's just like not being a poised, polished famous athlete. He's, giving sponsors reasons to drop him. So because people are dropping him, and like he's still in season, and there's still like major competitions happening or coming up, Summer gets sent to go babysit him and make sure he stays in line. When she does that, she goes out and lives at the ranch that him and his family live on, and so they spend literally all day every day together. So yeah, so because it's about a bull rider, it has all the country vibes, and I loved it. I liked it a lot. I liked both of them. I liked their romance. I liked their banter. I really enjoyed the setting. I will say, don't go look up bull riders after, because they don't look like how she's describing them in this book. I mean, some of them might, so sorry, but just keep it in your head with how she describes it. That's what you should do. And then after that, I read another book in the Never After series, Hugged. Actually, this one is the first one in the series, and Crossed, which I read before this one, is the last one in the series. So, not that they're connected in any way, it's just that like, this is the first one she wrote, and the one I read first is the last one she wrote. So obviously the books are most likely gonna get better. So going from the last to the first was maybe not the best idea, because this one is a Peter Pan retelling, and it's just not as like seamlessly weaved through the story. The ties to the actual fairy tale are just and references are just a bit more literal in this book. Like, so it's the male main character is Hooked, and then the female main character is Wendy. So in this story, Wendy is Peter Pan's daughter, and obviously Hook hates Peter Pan, and he tries to get close to Wendy to get back at Peter Pan, which his name isn't Peter Pan in the book. I think it's, oh, Peter Michaels. So I heard one of the references is that her dad, Peter Michaels, runs an airline business called Never Airlines. It's just kind of like, you know, like, I guess it's cheesier. And like something they say is like straight on till morning. Like, I mean, they don't say it like that, but it's like, that's the way they say in Peter Pan. So it's just like, okay, we could do without those like little lines, but you know, whatever. I liked it. It was fun. It's like drugs, mafia-ish. He lives on a boat. It's kind of fun. And again, dark. So, you know, if you need to read the trigger warnings like it says in the beginning of the book, then you should. Because they do start off like pretty abrupt, like dark stuff happens right away. But I think, checking my little notebook, I think I rated it, oh yeah, 4 stars. So good, but the Crossed was way better. And maybe I just like the Hunchback of Notre Dame vibes better than Peter Pan vibes. Peter Pan wasn't necessarily like one of my favorite fairy tales growing up. So then after that, I read a memoir, The Woman in Me, Britney Spears' memoir. I really love this. I think I read it, I got it the day that it came out, and then I think I read it in like 2 days. I like the way that it's written, and you can definitely tell that it's Britney. Like, it sounds like her when you read it. If you've ever watched like interviews of her, it sounds like her. And I wanted to read this because I'm a fan, but I think because of my age, I just happened to be at like, you know, the right few ages that started listening to music when her music started coming out, and that was like the biggest pop star. So she was, you know, one of my idols throughout growing up, and I listened to all of her music, got all her albums, and I remembered a lot of the major moments that happened in her life that were portrayed in the press. I remember those pretty clearly because I had such like an eye on Britney. Like, that's who I, you know, listened to and liked and stuff. So it's interesting to see her side of all those moments, and it was just so sad, you know. I cried at the end of this book. I really did. I think I might have been like in an emotional week or something, but like still, it really hit me. There's some lighter moments too, a little bit here and there, or like funnier moments, I guess, because like Britney, she's like a Southern girl. She's very sweet. She's always so nice to everyone, right? But like she throws in those little like Southern ways of like, those little like Southern hospitality ways of throwing shade at someone. And so it's funny in some of these moments, like when she talks about Justin Timberlake or other people. So that was funny. And there are some things that I actually like, other information about her history that I didn't know before. So I did learn a couple new things too, which I thought some of them were just like wild. I was just like, wow, it's so interesting, like how her life was. But just super sad. And I mean, I would recommend to anyone who's a Britney Spears fan or just has a little bit of interest in and remembers, like, you know, her getting pregnant and shaving her head and, you know, hitting the car with her umbrella, like those crazy moments. Crazy, sorry, I shouldn't use that word. You know, then definitely give this book a read. But I just hope that now that she's out of her conservatorship that she can just be happy, live a happy life. Poor Brit. And then after that, I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. It is a dark academia, and I thought it was like thriller-ish in a way. Like, not necessarily just like a thriller, but like you really just wanted to keep turning the page to see what was gonna happen next. And that makes me think of a thriller. So I actually didn't turn the page because I listened to the audiobook. I read it in like 2 days, listened to it in like 2 days, literally. Like, I could not stop listening to it. So it's about two girls, June and Athena. Athena ends up dying and June steals her unpublished manuscript. They were in school together, became writers at the same time, both published books, and Athena became a star and June didn't. So when she dies and steals her manuscript, she ends up finishing it and publishing it as her own book. The book kind of just follows her from there in her journey through publishing it and what happens when she doesn't, you know, make that not so great of a choice. I don't want to say much else. I didn't know a lot about it, so I think that's why it was so good and why I just had to keep turning the page. So yeah, 5 stars for Yellowface. Okay, we're almost done. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I feel like that went by fast. Okay, so the next book I read was Elanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And I did read that this was her debut novel. I mean, I think she's written more since. I think this has been out for a while, but this was her first one. This book is about Elanor, and I think we're in the UK, I think. So she is a social misfit and like has this very mundane life. Like, it's not great. She had a traumatic childhood, and you know, now she just, like I said, lives this very mundane life. One day at her job, she ends up connecting a little bit more with one of her coworkers, and as they get to know each other, she starts to learn that there's a bit more to life than she's kind of thought. And then she also goes on like this just like journey to deal with her traumatic past. Basically, we find out more about what happens, and then how she deals with it. There is a lot of focus on mental health in this book and some sensitive topics. It was a really good book. I really wanted to keep picking this up and just find out, you know, what's she up to, what's happening. There were some, you know, sad moments in this book, but I really liked it. The last book I read on my Kindle. It was the second book in the Chestnut Springs series, which is Heartless. And I'm trying to think if I like explained it as well before, but the series follows like a family. There's brothers, a sister, a friend, and all the books are about one of them. I don't know if they're about all of them because I haven't really like totally looked, but it's set in a small town called Chestnut Springs outside of Calgary, Canada. And I don't know if Chestnut Springs is a real place. I'm assuming no. But this one I gave 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it more than the first one. This one is about Cade, who is Rhett's brother. Rhett was from the first book. And Willa, who is Summer from the first book's best friend. So Cade he works on the family ranch, and he's a single dad. And so Summer suggests that Willa come babysit his son during the summer. So she ends up living with them, and yeah, this book is heavy on the romance, heavy on the spice. Love all the characters, love the single dad trope, loved Willa being like just like this spunky girl. I loved her personality. They had a really great banter, and it seemed to have like a little bit more depth than the first one, or maybe just their love connection was stronger. There's a little bit of an age gap between them. He's like 40 and she's, oh my god, is that for real? I think he's 40 and she's 25. Yeah, pretty sure that just stunned me. Like, what? So yeah, there's that plays into it, where he's like, I'm too old for you, and she's like, no, you're not. Okay, if that didn't make you want to read it, I don't know what will. Okay, so that's all the books that I read in 2023. Exciting. And yeah, for 2024, I hope to read more books by making more time for books, which is hard when you have a daughter and work and, you know, social life. So we'll see. But I do plan on making some more time for it. I have a ton of books that I want to read. And with that, we'll talk a little bit about the books that I want to read this month, my January TBR. What had happened in December was that I kept starting books and not finishing them. Not necessarily because I didn't like them, just because I just kept wanting to either read something else or basically just that. So for January, I want to finish the books that I started and didn't finish. Hopefully, because I don't want like stragglers hanging out there as I just keep moving on to new books. So last month or 2 months ago maybe, when I read Yellowface, I was on like kind of like a high from that book and was like, what else can I read that is like this book? And then I was like, oh, read another one of her books, maybe. So I started reading The Poppy War on my Kindle. The Poppy War is a fantasy novel with also like some historical fiction, I guess, in it. So I wonder what percent I'm in. I think I'm probably about like almost halfway with that one. It's really good. I don't know. I moved on to another book. So definitely gonna try to finish that one this month. And then another book that I started and didn't finish is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I am this far, so like pretty much halfway through. I really have been liking the first half of this book, but it just kind of slowed down a little bit in the middle. And so I kind of just like switched it up and started something else. So I am planning to read this one this month for sure. And hopefully it's good. Like, hopefully it starts to pick back up a little bit. That would be great. But regardless, I'm gonna finish it. And then what I'm currently reading is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. So this is part of a fantasy series. And I don't know how to explain this. They have an interesting magic system in this world, and so that's fun to read about. And it's kind of like a rebellion, we're gonna overthrow the government kind of book. And right now I'm really liking it. So yeah, I'm already like itching to get the other books, and I'm not even done yet. I'm like this much of the way. Look at how floppy this book is. This book is nuts. And also it's bigger than like a normal size like paperback. The pages are like super thin. Sorry. So I wanted to like highlight and annotate this book, but I don't think I can. Like I'm just scared because I don't want it to be like way too much of like a bleed through situation. I'm trying to find oh yeah. My husband got me this little stamp for Christmas. And I stamped it, and like it's definitely like bleeding through quite a bit. So that's like a little bit of a bummer, but I like this cover though, so I like these ones. And I do like how sloppy. I think I'm gonna buy though a hardcover of this too, because like I just like that much. But yeah, this is definitely on January TBR. Probably will be the first book that I finish in January, I'm gonna guess. Okay, so books that I haven't read yet that are on my TBR for January are both Crescent City books. So I want to read the first one, House of Earth and Blood, and then House of, what do I want to say, the third book's name? House of Sky and Breath. Because House of Flame and Shadow? Because the third one's coming out the end of this month, so I want to read these. They're by Sarah J. Maas, the same person that wrote the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and these books are semi-tied to that world, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to read more of her books because there's just like, I don't know, there's just kind of nothing quite like it. I mean, I'm sure there is, I just haven't read that many books, so I don't know. But yeah, these are on my TBR. I don't know. It's January 8th. No, 9th? I don't know. It's like a little bit into January, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to read like both of these books. But maybe they'll be so good that I'll fly through them and read them fast. Okay, and then I have one other book that I want to read in January because I live in Michigan, and this book is about Mackinac Island in the winter. So I want to read it while it's wintry. So this book is Forever and Ever by Lucy Score. It's a romance book. Like I said, Mackinac Island in the winter. So that's just fun. I mean, I've been to Mackinac Island a ton of times, and I know like what they say it's like in the winter because everyone leaves the island. Well, like a lot of people leave the island, so it's like very small town. This will be small town romance, but like deserted small town because most Mackinac Island businesses are just seasonal, and most of the people that live there are seasonal because it's just hard to get your groceries and stuff in the winter. People drive around on snowmobiles during the winter because cars aren't allowed during season, and I think people can have like I think there's like some cars during the winter. I don't know, not 100% sure, but most people do snowmobiles because it's mostly snowy. Yeah, I'm just excited to read a book that's in like a town that I've been to multiple times. So I just know exactly what they're talking about, you know? Like I don't think many people can say that about a novel they read, honestly. So, and like, look how pretty it's got the trees, the winter colors, winter vibes. It's so soft. So it's gonna be like such a nice book, like satisfying book to hold and read. And it's like kind of like heavier and floppy. It's got really nice like thick pages, you know, but like the smooth kind, not like the rough papery kind. Anyway, I want to read this because I want to read it in the winter. And I don't want to read too much like into what it's about. I do want to say there's something to do with like painting. At least that's what the lady at the bookstore told me. Like she... I don't know, but I'm excited. So that was all the books that I read in 2023 and my TBR for January 2024. That's all I have today, but maybe we'll come back and share what we read for what we ended up reading in January. Because who knows, maybe I will not stick to the TBR. Let's all, if you're watching this, do me a favor and comment below which book I read and described, or which book I am planning to read, but I didn't really describe those ones, so I guess maybe not those ones. Put one of the books that I described down below that intrigued you the most, that you think you would want to read the most about what I just listed. Did that make any sense? I don't know. Or if you've read them all or read most of them, comment which book was your favorite that you read. And with that, I will leave you guys